as New Zealand's refugee quota is set to increase, refugee centres are almost empty with no arrivals scheduled while border restrictions remain in place. The last refugees arrived on March 13th and stayed at the Māngere Refugee Resettlement Centre, where they were immediately in self-isolation. Since then, many of the 118 have been resettled and the few remaining are preparing to move out in the coming days. Through an interpreter, Amy Williams and video journalist Simon Rogers talked to a family on their last day at the centre.
From a country marred by decades-long violent conflict to lockdown in New Zealand, this Colombian family are ready for a new start. Luis Hernandez and wife Jackie Yagari and their two daughters were among the last to arrive in this country as refugees before lockdown.
My personal experience, as soon as I came off of the airport, I could breathe that clean air, seeing the streets very well formed, clean. That was a very good experience.
De como que dejas tantos miedos atrás.
For me, more than breathing that clean air, was also the feeling of safetyness. Knowing that everything is going to be fine. That was perhaps the most important feeling for me.
On arrival at the resettlement centre, the family spent 2 weeks in self-isolation as people were tested for Covid-19 on arrival. No one tested positive. The day Mr Hernandez and his family arrived in New Zealand, there had been no reported deaths due to Covid-19 in Colombia. Now there's been over 6,500.
Before we departed from Ecuador, we knew that there were 7 cases of coronavirus in New Zealand. But knowing that we were going to arrive in a place where everything was well controlled and well looked after was a peace of mind for us.
Then level 4 restrictions hit and everyone spent 4 weeks in lockdown. They shared their bubble with another family in the same unit at the resettlement centre with set times for going outdoors.
More than the difficulties that we may have faced, because of course it's complicated, but for me was the most complex thing was I was impatient. I really wanted to go out and see this new country, and for me that was a bit more complicated. The need of having to see all that I wanted to see, all the dreams I had. In my case, the lockdown was more a state of mind. It was more about the way I managed things in my head. For me, it was more like a holiday, because I knew that afterwards I was going to start a new life. Instead, I took the opportunity to research more about New Zealand and the things that we could do once we are in the community.
The centre's on-site school provided online learning for the children. Staff put buckets of chalk out and organised activities as restrictions eased. Mr Hernandez says his eldest daughter, who's 10, took it in her stride.
No fue tan complejo. Well, we are blessed. God sent us a very smart girl, and it wasn't difficult for us to explain to her what was happening. When she wanted to go out and play with the kids, we always managed the situation in a way that we are the ones that arrived in this country, so we have to be cautious. And she always understood things well. She was patient. So, as I said, we were blessed.
Since then, the school at the resettlement centre has slowly shrunk to 1 class as families have been resettled. Now there are 3 children. Next week there'll be none, and teachers have been redeployed to other schools. From this month, New Zealand's refugee quota increases from 1,000 refugees a year to 1,500. It's bittersweet for Immigration Manager Sarah Ward, who works at the Māngere Centre.
So I've been here 7 years, and it is a bit surreal. But we're really looking forward to a time when we can safely bring people back in. We know we've got families waiting overseas and we're ready to bring them. It's just about making sure it's safe for them to come and go through transit to get to New Zealand, as well as obviously keeping New Zealand safe.
The global pandemic is likely to reduce the number of refugees who arrive in this quota year. Immigration New Zealand is working with agencies in New Zealand and overseas, including the UN Refugee Agency, on requirements to resume refugee settlement once border restrictions are lifted. This includes ensuring travel routes are open and appropriate health measures and controls are in place overseas. Ms Ward says she was impressed with the resilience of those arriving at the refugee centre as the pandemic started to unravel.
I think the most amazing thing was the way the families responded. I think we sometimes forget how amazingly resilient they are, and people maintained an extremely positive and optimistic attitude throughout the whole thing. And it doesn't change with the quota, that you tend to see these trends of people just eager to get at life. You know, this is their chance to make a new start. And so we saw, as we would with any other quota, but kids just bursting at the seams, ready to start school and learn, and mum and dad just really keen to get in and learn English and find out how they're going to get jobs. So maybe that was just emphasised more in this group because they had that period of lockdown, that they just were ready to burst and get on with life.
The family leaves for their new home in Blenheim tomorrow.
Muy felices.
We are very happy. Blenheim is our beginning, and this is our beginning. New beginnings. This is a new page in our book of life, and we are writing it right now. We are very excited.
For now, it's not known when the next refugees will arrive in New Zealand. For Checkpoint, Amy Williams.